Good evening. My name is Scott Goldstein. I'm the founder and executive director of the teacher leadership organization EmpowerEd.
Mr. Goldstein, can you shut off your microphones, please? We're getting some feedback. Thank you.
I want to thank the State Board of Education for putting this issue on the agenda because we cannot build or sustain success in our schools without stability. That's why my organization has put the issue of teacher turnover front and center. And I'm glad to be here today to talk about the new data on this issue, but I want to remind everyone at the beginning that data only matters if it's informed by human experience. And too often it can drive us away from personal student and individual school-driven solutions. Teacher turnover has a really deep effect on our students. So listening to teacher and student voices and acting on them can help us be driven by those experiences. We have to ask hard questions then about why the data does or does not reflect what we're hearing from teachers, principals, and students. And there's no better window into this than the recent Washingtonian piece, Mr. Diaz has a choice to make. So I'll be reading some clips. Mr. Diaz is 26 years old, and he's the most experienced teacher at Ayton Elementary School in Ward 7, a school with 44% annual turnover. The article, through this powerful story, hits on all the answers to the questions I anticipate that's at the top of your minds, which is, why is Washington, D.C.'s turnover unique? Why is it uniquely high? The article talks about the pressure felt to choose between integrity and more impressive metrics. We have a political system for education in D.C. that's unlike almost any other in the country. That is unique. The teachers at Ayton Elementary said that the message from central office to Ayton was unequivocal. Raise your numbers or else. The teachers liked their principal, but they knew the pressure was unsustainable on both of them. At the end of the year, one of the featured teachers left saying he wanted to teach, and all the policies we prescribe to our priority schools don't allow him to do that. It's all about numbers. Numbers don't go up when teachers can't teach and they can't reach our students. So we have to reverse that formula that says that our highest priority schools get the least autonomy. And I believe DCPS is starting to understand that and is working towards it with ideas like the DCPS Design Lab. It mentions that turnover is likely higher than our numbers suggest because so many are leaving one school for another. We have a system of choice in DC, larger than any other city, and that makes transience the norm for students and teachers alike, and the two are related. The article discusses how hard it is to establish trust with families when turnover is so high. And with families in these wards having so many charter choices, before the teachers can do the hard work of building that trust, families move. And then the teachers leave, and the students often come back, and the families grow more disillusioned, and the cycle feeds itself. Next, we have a habit of taking our most effective principals and shuffling them throughout the district, patching up emergencies with effective principals without the forethought on what happens to the school they just left. Principals on one-year contracts cannot establish a culture that provides consistency to the teaching staff or families. The data on turnover continues to be troubling, 25% overall in both sectors, but the biggest mistake we could make is to believe that this turnover at high-poverty schools is somehow par for the course. We have to reject the notion that turnover is high at higher at-risk schools because this churn is just a result of burnout from teaching high-poverty students. There's no doubt urban education has its challenges, but people are working in DC precisely because they want to teach and work with these students. Back to the article. It says he was 25, fresh out of Teach for America's 2014 Summer Institute, and wanted to work at Ayton so badly he'd blown off opportunities to work at other schools. He was dying to work at Ayton. That's the school he wanted to teach at. Think about that. Our turnover problem isn't a result of the challenging work that we have with our students. It's a result of adults making that work more difficult for other adults. Our turnover rate has far more to do with the difference in adult culture here in DC than it is in other places. I've seen it myself. You attempt to reach your students, and you're told that those efforts are not aligned or not rigorous enough. That's the language people use who don't have experience teaching in our schools. It's not hard to see when you look through the ranks of education policy officials in this city the enormous amount who have 2 or 3 years of teaching experience, max. For many, classroom experience was simply a prerequisite to the jobs they truly sought in policy, and there's no knock on that, people who want to go into education policy. But in that world, we have a responsibility to look out for the broader community and for all of our students, because these students and their educations is not a laboratory for our careers. It's their lives and their futures that are on the line. For those reasons, we have to be very careful about how and who these programs choose to recruit. The truth is we're recruiting a lot of teachers who we know aren't likely to stay for more than 2 or 3 years. So there's a big difference between teachers who enter our system through a Teach for America style program, though it has its benefits, for example, as opposed to those who enter through something like the Inspired Teaching Residency. And I'll wrap up quickly, and I have a longer testimony to submit. But second, we can accept the narrative that our higher than average turnover is a positive indicator of our differential turnover of effective and highly effective teachers. The data does not bear that out, and I'm glad to talk about that more at length. New inexperienced teachers may be cheaper for the system, but that model is not to the benefit of our students. There are many solutions to this, and I'm happy in my extended testimony I talk about 6 or 7 different suggested solutions, and I'm happy to talk about that more.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein, and some of those I'm sure will come up in Q&A.